Hello, this is Alan Wheeler with a little video chat intended for my college English classes. If you have stumbled upon this video on YouTube, no need to like or make comments or subscribe. There's no intention to go viral or make money or anything, as this is for my classes. Um, this little video chat is based on an article from the textbook we're using now, The Reader by James MacDonald. But this article, Rethinking the American Dream by David Kamp, originally appeared in Vanity Fair. So it's a magazine article. The title of it is Rethinking the American Dream. The author is David Kamp. It can be found online as well as in some anthologies and readers. The activity that I do in class with the students is to kind of make a timeline and break the article into chronological sections, and then have students find specific examples and general descriptions for the various eras, and depending on the size of the class, I'll break it down in different ways. But generally, I'll give some of the students the introduction and conclusion, which focuses on the ideal of the American dream. And so 1776 and the Declaration of Independence kind of stand as an ideal. And then Obama calling the American dream in reverse, to describe in 2009 when this article was published, and kind of giving the reversal and disappointment in more recent years with the American dream. Also, the article talks about the Wild West version here of the American dream, with the Census Bureau declaring the end of the frontier in 1890. And after that, we have some years leading into the Great Depression, the post-war era, which I have students look at, and then what David Kamp calls the juice ball era from 1990 on, with the ideas of extreme success that he describes in the article. So that's kind of the breakdown or timeline that I give various groups. Now, let me go through quickly, and I'll kind of fill in the blanks as we go, but sometimes I have students identify the dates of various things. But the article opens with a description of Moss Hart after a successful night when his first Broadway play was produced. And as he's crossing the Brooklyn Bridge, having grown up in a poor family, he was seeing his dreams fulfilled there. And he had a patriotic surge of kind of the vision of opportunities available in America. So that was 1930. Also in the beginning of the article, David Kamp quotes from the Declaration of Independence the certain unalienable rights that include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness there in the beginning of the article. And then quickly, just before getting to his thesis or main idea, he does quote Barack Obama, and this is the quote. As he describes a continuing, quote, continuing disaster for America's working families that amounts to no less than, quote, the American dream in reverse. So this is the background for the article. And let me just read what I would say is the closest to a formal thesis sentence in the article. He writes, "Let's face it, if Moss Hart, like so many others, was able to rally from the depths of the Great Depression, then surely the viability of the American dream isn't in question. What needs to change is our expectation of what the dream promises and our understanding of what that vague and promiscuously used term, the American dream, is really supposed to mean." So there we have it. The article, as the title suggests, will be Rethinking the American Dream. Let me highlight some of the details and some of the dates from the article. In 1931, a book called The Epic of America was written by James Truslow Adams. And Kamp claims this is the first formal use of the term the American dream, although the ideal was certainly present. And in this book, Adams saw the American dream as offering personal liberty, opportunities, as well as a material component to the dream. So, although Kamp does argue that it becomes too extreme and too and overemphasized, too pronounced, there was a element of prosperity in the dream, even in these early years. Now, the next big date on my chart is 1890, the end of the frontier, and what Kamp describes before that time is the Wild West version of the dream. And this was the rugged individualism, the gold rush, the almost selfish ambition of rushing out to claim property during those years. He also quotes Woodrow Wilson in 1913, looking back over this industrial age and looking back at how homesteaders, prospectors, wildcatters, and railroad men rushed into nature. And Woodrow Wilson, just to abbreviate his quote from the article, said, "We have squandered nature." Much more extensive and eloquent a quote, but to limit it there a bit, we have squandered nature. And so these ideas refer back to what Kamp calls the immature, individualistic, Wild West version of the American dream in the 1800s. Now, a more ideal version for Kamp seems to be during the 1930s and 40s, and he cites the New Deal of 1933, the Social Security Act of 1935, even the GI Bill in 1944. And these are demonstrations, he says, of not a checklist of goals or entitlements, but rather he thinks they reflect deeply held ideals, and that this material component to the dream, allowing these things for the people, these material things for the people, is part of the dream as he charts it out. He goes on and he does an interesting thing by referring to several television shows. He goes back to Leave It to Beaver in the 1950s, how a middle class or even upper middle class family is living in a kind of successful lifestyle. But then in the 1970s, the Brady Bunch, the father is an architect. The family is more affluent. Then he looks at the 1980s and the Cosby Show, when the father is a doctor, the mother a lawyer, and the family is even more affluent. And then in the 1990s, he calls it the juice ball era, the juice ball era of the American dream. And now he says that buying habits have gone to an extreme. And he cites the rising credit problems. He says that consumer credit was at 45 billion from 1945 to 1960 and reaches 105 billion in 1970. And he refers to the anticipated buying of flat screen TVs and other examples of the buying habits in this, what he calls extreme success, that he feels has gone too far. So he reaches his conclusion, and he describes what he does not mean by redefining, rethinking the American dream, and what he does mean. And let me end with this. He says that it is not a matter of any generation having to, quote, lower its sights, to use President Obama's words, nor is it a denial that some children of lower and middle class parents will strike it rich. Although he doesn't like the norm or the idea that we must strike it rich. He says, nor is it a moony, nostalgic wish for a return to the scrappy 30s or the suburban 50s. He does recognize that there's plenty about the good old days that wasn't so good. But he does say these past eras do offer lessons in, quote, scale and self-control. He says the American dream should require hard work, but not 80-hour work weeks. It should entail a first-rate education, but not an education that allows no extra time for childhood and the enjoyment of childhood. He says the American dream should accommodate the goal of home ownership, but without imposing, quote, a lifelong burden of unmeetable debt. So he calls for sustainability and a reasonable vision. He calls it a sense of possibility and a decent chance, rather than the extreme success that the American dream seemed to become in the juice ball era. So that is, although in class the students generally come up with these descriptions and specific examples, that's basically the content we do cover from Rethinking the American Dream by David Kamp. And I hope that helps you with your assignments. Thank you.